Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I'll be showing you guys the ultimate glass cannon DPS build, which is basically set up just to do as much damage as humanly possible. I know a lot of you don't really care about the DPS number, and I'm going to stop showing that in thumbnails and stuff, but I figured I might as well show it in-game as well, because some people use it as a metric. But regardless, if you don't care about that, I'm able to do well over 200k a headshot with an assault rifle using this build, so as you can tell, the damage is just absolutely insane. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using this build though while doing like difficult content such as the raid or heroic missions where some damage is kind of unavoidable, because like I said, this build is a glass cannon, meaning that you don't really have that much survivability like whatsoever. There are of course a few things that you can do with this build to give it a bit of survivability, and it will still be super strong for dishing out damage, and I'll make sure to mention that throughout the video. But my main goal with this was just to have fun with it and to see how far I could push the limit and just see how much damage that I could do. But with that being said, I wouldn't use this build, like I said, for doing super hard content, but for doing just normal everyday stuff, it's pretty good because you can still avoid dying pretty easily as long as you play somewhat tactfully, and in most cases you'll be fine, but of course it's something to be wary of. But in other words, damage is survivability if you want to look at it that way. But if you'd like to see more of this build in action, I left a decent amount of gameplay at the end of the video of me doing control points, bounties, missions, etc. So you can see for yourself how good the build actually is in practice there. But anyways, before I get into the build, if anybody needs help farming for gear, maybe setting up a build, or anything along those lines, feel free to email me at nick2biz@gmail.com and I would love to help you out. I'm also doing a giveaway over on Twitter for a Logitech G305 mouse, a $50 Amazon gift card, and a gift card of your choosing, either being a PSN, Xbox, or Steam card. All you have to do to enter is just follow the Twitter link in the description, retweet that tweet, then follow me on Twitter, and you'll be entered in. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Alright, first off, sorry for my voice. I literally woke up like half an hour ago, but anyways, let's get into it. First off, starting off with the specialization. I always run sharpshooter when I play with an AR. I mean, you're getting 30% headshot damage, or 25 headshot damage, 30% reload speed, ton of stability, and accuracy, of course. But if you don't want to run this, you can easily go, survivalist for pure weapon damage if you're worried about getting value out of the reload speed and the headshot damage. I think it's insanely valuable to have both of those things, but if you just want pure weapon damage that is more safe and more consistent, survivalist you can definitely go for. Now, getting into the build itself, there's a couple things that I want to preface this with. First off, a lot of people are going to say your build's only good because you have the exotic AR. As you can see in this clip right here, I can still do very good damage with this AK that is my secondary, and I don't even have the right talents on it that I would want. I just haven't bothered re-rolling it. If I were to actually use this, I would probably want to have like Strained or Allegro on it, and obviously I'm not gaining benefit from Optimist or Distance while I was in the shooting range. So if I actually had those buffs up, I would have way more damage than you saw in that clip. So as you can see, the damage is still very good regardless of the gun that I'm using. Obviously though, I'm going to use the exotic AR because that is the best AR in the game. Next point, my survivability is very low, like I was saying in the beginning of the video. So yeah, I kind of fold over like a wet noodle, but hey, that's the whole point of a glass cannon, right? Just push out as much damage as possible, and that's what I want to do with this build, just to have some fun. Another quick thing to mention, a lot of people are also going to say you're only doing a lot of damage because you're stacking headshot damage. You can very easily just not use a Raldi and then just swap out Precise for Devastating, and you would still do very good with the build. The difference is actually not that substantial in overall damage, going for Precise versus going for Devastating and then swapping out a Raldi for other pieces. So just wanted to mention that because I often get comments of people saying it's only good because you have a lot of headshot damage and you're on PC. Build's still going to be amazing even on console. So the main gist of the build is pretty much just stacking as much weapon damage, headshot damage, crit chance, and damage to elites as humanly possible while not sacrificing either or of those things. Now what I mean by that is, let's say on this chest piece, right, I'm able to get headshot damage, weapon damage, and crit chance all at the same time. You kind of want to prioritize the weapon damage here, but you can also get the crit chance and the headshot damage for free without having to sacrifice the weapon damage. That's pretty much the main point of this build. Obviously I'm going to be using an assault rifle. You can very well easily use, an LMG or a normal rifle if you would like to. You just have to swap out the chest piece. But anyways, getting into how I have everything set up, pretty much my brand sets are 3-piece Wyvern, and then 2-piece Araldi for headshot damage, and then 1-piece Fenris for the assault rifle damage. The reason I'm going 3-piece Wyvern is pretty much just because I might as well Usually I don't recommend going for crit damage or crit chance just because the overall benefit that you're getting from that is pretty negligible at the end of the day because those values are pretty low. But since this is a glass cannon build, there isn't really a reason to use any other brand sets, and you kind of actually just end up getting the extra damage for free almost, just because, you know, you're completely ignoring overall survivability or any utility. So since I have all that freedom, I can go Wyvern and just get extra crit damage and extra crit chance. Like I said, it's just free extra damage, and then of course, like I said, Araldi for just some headshot damage. You could easily swap this out for, you know, something like Alps or something with more mod slots, or so you can go for flat weapon damage, or you could go for a different type of brand set. That's entirely up to you what you want to do there. And then of course, this is pretty obvious, a Fenris chest for the assault rifle damage. So let's talk about the weapon, and then I'll get into every piece and how you want to have things rolled. So of course, I'm using an Eagle Bearer. I know a lot of people don't have that. If you don't have that, that's perfectly fine. Build is still going to be very good. I'd recommend either a P416 or an AK. Both are really good. P416 most of the time is going to be pretty much better, but if you have an AK, that's a good bet as well. In terms of the talents here, obviously you can't get Optimist because you have, you know, more than 13 or more than 5 red attributes. So ideally, you'd probably want to go Strained just for the synergy with Strained and Berserk, especially when you're at very low HP, which is pretty easy to play it considering that you have such low armor as it is. So you can get a lot of value out of this, especially if you're at crit chance cap or if you're at around 50%. That's just a huge amount of extra damage, but if you don't have Strained or you don't really want to have to, you know, only get your damage out of being at very low HP, you want to have more consistent damage, Ranger is going to be pretty good as well. If you're, you know, just extra damage from playing at a further distance. I guess you could go Killer if you're going for a decent amount of crit chance, but the overall damage you get from Killer isn't that good, and it only lasts for 5 seconds. Only other thing I could guess recommend is maybe Breadbasket, but you really want to just go for Ranger or Strain there. Killer isn't too bad. Breadbasket is okay. Yeah, in terms of weapon mods, you'd probably just want the 8% damage to elites. And then if you're using a normal AR, by the way, you probably would want to use a Nemesis secondary or a Chatterbox secondary, of course. I can't do that because I have, you know, the Eagle Bear equipped, but you'd probably want to use the Nemesis for the headshot damage or the Chatterbox for the rate of fire there. And then in terms of the scope, you'd probably want the 5% if you're using the Nemesis, or the 8% for without the Nemesis if you're using the Chatterbox. For the mag, I just have headshot damage here, but you could go for extra rounds or something, you know, up to you. Laser pointer on the grip for the crit chance is free extra damage, and the muzzle damage to elites, of course. Now getting into the individual pieces on the mask, pretty simple. You just want to get a very high damage to elites roll, and then if you can get some crit chance on there as well, that helps out a bit, but it isn't mandatory, of course. Main thing is just get a high amount of damage to elites. Overall, I have 53% here, which is pretty nice. Moving on to my chest, I of course have a Fenris. You definitely want a Fenris because you want to be able to get the talent Berserk and hard hitting on the same chest piece, and you also want, you know, the assault rifle damage. I should have talked about this earlier, but here we are. Running Berserk pretty much just because I wouldn't be able to get Unstoppable Force with this build, and because if I'm at very low HP, Berserk is going to net me a huge amount of extra damage. And this chest piece that I have is kind of just insane because it rolled to 17 headshot damage by default and 5 crit chance, and then I was able to just roll a huge weapon damage roll in here, which was pretty nice. But on the chest piece, you kind of want to prioritize weapon damage, and then if you can get crit chance or headshot damage or a combination of both, that's a nice side effect. You could also decide to spec into some survivability here. You get like a total of 60k HP if you wanted to, just to make sure that you actually can use this build outside of just messing around, if you feel like it's necessary. And then for my mods, I have defensive protocol. I would much rather have an offensive system here that would actually improve my damage by a ton. I'd have something like this where I have, you know, weapon damage, damage to armor, and then AR damage right here. That would be huge, but unfortunately I'm kind of stuck with this one because this was the best chest piece that I had with Berserk and hard hitting. In terms of the holster here, you pretty much just want, at least in terms of an Araldi holster, you want to go for crit chance, and then the talent you can go for like precise or devastating, up to you. Then throwing in offensive protocol mods out there. You could also go for like an RNK holster instead, because RNK holsters actually get system mod slots, which means that you can get overall more damage than you would on a protocol mod slot. So if you're not too keen on the headshot damage from Araldi, you can easily go RNK holster, get an offensive system mod. And another thing, if you're trying to get some survivability, you could use a holster kind of like this. Just get like 40k health instead of the crit chance there. I have the crit chance though, just for, you know, more overall survivability. Or you could also go for like a crazy Gila holster like this that has some health, crit chance, and then 2 offensive mod slots there to make up for that lack of weapon damage with not having a talent. That's a couple different ways to set it up there, but of course I just have Heraldry for the headshot damage and the crit chance. My backpack is kind of interesting. I don't know if I would prefer to have a Wyvern backpack. The nice thing about having Wyvern is that I get the 3-piece, right, with the 10% crit chance. The thing though is Gila backpacks are insane because you can get double system mod slots, which means that you could put in a offensive system and a generic mod, which is, I guess, one thing to keep in mind. But for me, the Wyvern backpack was nice because it has 9% crit damage and 9% weapon damage. The crit chance is kind of low. I'd probably rather have higher crit chance than crit damage, but whatever. You could, of course, go for health here as well if you wanted to. Maybe just supplement the crit chance or the crit damage, whatever. But of course, this is giving me a lot of extra damage, and I'm getting the 3-piece from Wyvern. And then I just have hard hitting on here, and then I have a generic mod with assault rifle damage. I'd probably rather have an offensive system mod here because it's going to give me more than just 5% flat damage. But of course, if I were to run a Gila backpack, which is very strong, I could throw in a generic mod here and an offensive system mod, as well as still having, you know, weapon damage, crit damage, and potentially armor or something else here. And maybe even crit chance as well if you got a lucky roll, but the Wyvern seemed to do pretty well for me. In terms of the gloves here, I went for Heraldry. My AR damage could be higher, could be like 12%, but it's only Heraldry gloves that I have, so is what it is. I went for Precise, could of course go for Devastating if you want pure weapon damage. If you don't want to run Heraldry, you could go for Gila if you want some extra health and get a protocol mod slot here maybe, or you could go for, like I said earlier, an Alps, because Alps gets offensive protocol mod slots, which means that you can get just more flat weapon damage as opposed to stacking solely into headshot damage. That's the only glove that can actually get that. You could also do something interesting kind of like this. Sorry that I'm going over all of this, but I just want people to be able to make informed decisions and actually know how to set their build up despite maybe not having the perfect pieces. In terms of for these gloves, you could easily run this as well where you have like crit chance, and then you could also go for the weapon damage here, and then maybe have like, you know, Precise or whatever here. That's another possibility if you're just going for pure weapon damage. For the knee pads here, I have Wyvern knee pads. I went for crit chance, just free damage here. You could also go for health, I guess. Hard hitting, and then offensive protocol mod slot as well. It's pretty no-brainer to get the Wyvern because it pretty much just rolls how you'd want it to for a glass cannon setup. You could also go for, like, I guess, Providence if you wanted to. In the meantime, it pretty much rolls the same as Wyvern does. It's just a different brand set here. And then if you just want survivability or something kind of different, Gila isn't that bad because you can get health here, and then you could also get hard hitting, and then you could throw in a generic mod into the defensive system mod, and then maybe another generic with headshot damage into the protocol mod. Kind of up to you how you want to do that, but I like the Wyvern one because I'm getting crit chance, free damage, hard hitting, and then more damage on the mod slot there. So yeah, in terms of the skills that you want to be using, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, Defender Drone is pretty nice when you have Berserk up and you want to just be able to tank bullets, because you can play pretty risky like that. The only problem is that if your Defender Drone gets shot, you kind of just die. So that's kind of a yikes, but when the Defender Drone is up, it's pretty nice, you know, against tanking bullets, so you can play pretty safe that way. Otherwise, you could just use a Reviver Hive like I have on, in case something bad happens, you know, the Reviver Hive pops out and you're chilling. Otherwise, you could just use a Chem Launcher for heals, or, you know, Drone heal, or maybe a Secret Mine heal if you're playing Survivalist. Isn't that big of a deal there. Main thing I just say is either Revive Hive or Defender Drone. That's really nice. A good pair with that is to have In Rhythm on your holster talent with pretty much any of those skills, really, especially with the Reviver Hive, because let's say that, you know, I use the Reviver Hive, it gets put on cooldown, but then boom, I proc In Rhythm, and then I have the Reviver Hive up again, meaning that even if I die due to just, you know, playing stupid, or just because my health is low in general, it's not that big of a deal because I end up resing myself. In terms of my overall stats here, let's take a look. I got 50% crit chance, which is pretty good. Let me scroll down. 56% crit damage. The crit damage isn't that high, but it's still extra damage overall. If I'm critting half the time and my crit damage is this high, I'm getting, what is that, 28% damage just overall. That's actually a lot of damage when you think about it, because it's multiplicative on top of everything else. So 28% damage overall is really nice. 140% headshot damage. That's just a lot of headshot damage. Then I have 24.5% all weapon damage and 24% assault rifle damage, but that's not even counting in the 50% that I could get from Berserk, which I have up pretty decent amount of the time. And then I, of course, have 83% damage to elites, which is a lot of damage to elites. And then my survivability. Oh no, such a noodle. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, this build is mainly meant for just doing a ton of damage, and it's very good at that. You can spec into survivability on the mask, the backpack, the knee pads, the holster, the chest. You end up losing a little bit of damage if you do that, but it's overall more of a versatile build if you want to do that. But like I said, I kind of just made this for fun and just want to see how much damage you could possibly get out. But yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one. Follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Nick2, and follow me on Twitter at Nick2YT. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Peace.